another edition of Grown, Sexy, Singles Over 40. I'm your host, DeShannon. There's no title in front of it. There's no comma behind it. I'm just DeShannon. But tonight, you don't want to miss this one. You might have missed some of the other ones when we talked about me introducing the show. I talked about what a man wants. I did 2 shows of that. Talked about online dating, how to navigate that. But tonight, we getting ready to talk about sex. Yes, sex. Now, we supposed to be grown, right? Good and grown. And we up here talking about we sexy, but we don't really have, some of us, the most healthiest relationship with our sexuality. So I've got a guess that you're gonna love. She's amazing. She's highly sought after. I know that. How do I know that? Because I consult with her practice. She is highly sought after. And I'm gonna let her introduce herself, tell you about what she does and all of that. But let's talk about sex. The reason why we're talking about sex, I know, don't start inboxing the pastor talking about this is Hope TV and we shouldn't be talking about that. This is exactly what we should be talking about because we're grown, good and grown. We're sexy, we're single over 40. Now, some of us have chosen to be celibate, to abstain. That may be your story. If your religious views or your personal views allow you to do that, we want to talk about that. Some of us have been in long-term committed relationships that suddenly find ourselves single again. Well, now what? What do we do with that type of sexual energy? I want to talk about things that we're not talking about at church. And just because Hope TV was birthed out of a ministry does not mean that we're not living normal lives. We are human beings. We have feelings. We have emotions. And that's what we're talking about. So let's talk about sex. Tag somebody. Let them know. Grown and Sexy, Singles Over 40. Every Monday, a new show airs at 9 p.m. We do the replay on Thursdays at 11 and Saturday. The replay is Thursday at 9 and Saturday at 11. But I told y'all, this isn't just for women. This is for men, too. So I know y'all have your idea of what a sex therapist is, but I want to introduce y'all. Welcome to Grown and Sexy, Cheryl Walker. So Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, thanks to Shannon for that awesome introduction.
Okay, so Cheryl, you are a sex therapist.
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
Let me say what it's not, because there's a huge misconception.
Okay.
I do not engage in touch. I am not a hands-on therapist when it comes to sexual wellness. I am a sex therapist, meaning if you have any sexual dysfunctions, if you have any emotional distress because of your sexual dysfunctions, if you feel that you are not living your authentic life sexually, then we can talk. That's the key word. We can talk about it. We can process emotions, process maybe past traumas that led you to that point. We can, and there will be times when it can get salacious because I may have tools and exercises to take home, but not to perform in front of me in our clinical space. So a sex therapist is someone who is there to ask you the tough questions, ask the intimate questions, the deep questions. Sometimes they may interfere with your morality or your perceived sense of morality. Sometimes it may interfere with the media's perception of sexuality. Sometimes with the medical, your perception of the medical perception of reality. But however, it's still within the constructs of you being your sexual self, authentically your sexual self, not being interrupted by anybody else's agenda.
I like that. I want to take us back a little bit because in our community, especially if you grew up in any type of religious setting, you really have an I'm going to say this is my term, it may not be what you consider, but it's almost an unrealistic view of what sex is. And for me, both my parents were ministers, mama and daddy. Imagine that. And then you know how they say, oh, preacher's kids the worst. Well, we ain't no worse than your bad children, but I digress. But it was like sex is bad until you get married, then all of a sudden it's supposed to be good. And so you didn't talk about it. You didn't, if you thought about it, it was like it's something, you was getting ready to burn in hell. You couldn't express it because you had no one to express it with. And for me, it was like you learned about sex in ways that I wish somebody had just talked to me about it. And so in our community, are you finding that sex is still taboo to talk about at home, or are we opening up some?
Unfortunately, no. It's still taboo, particularly when it comes to religion. Whether those with penises
Yeah.
are told, oh, if you masturbate, that's wasted seed, you're going to hell. If you have a vulva and you masturbate, you're told, oh, you can't touch yourself. What are you doing? That's a no-no. So instead of giving the truth, they're shamed into experiencing pleasure. They're shamed into being their own experts of their own bodies and their own selves. And then to your point, they have these so unrealistic expectations when man becomes wife and automatically we're supposed to know what to do and it's supposed to feel good and it's supposed to be the seamless transition of sexuality and procreation. That upsets me to the core of who I am, because every human has some type of sexual energy. It may not be as strong as others, but, and here's where I may get some preacher folks hate on me, but that's okay. God instilled love into each one of us, self-love.
Yes.
God instilled this sense of pleasure into us. Yes, some folks can take it totally to the left and take
Right.
advantage of that. And clearly you're gonna have outliners wherever you go, outliers rather. But at the core of who we are still God's children. He
Yes.
does not make any mistakes. If we have well, I don't, but if someone has a penis, if someone has a vulva, God gave it to us for a reason. And it does not necessarily mean this monolithic reason of procreation.
Yeah.
Especially when so much pleasure can be derived from the actual, not even intercourse, but just an exchange of sexual energy, just an exchange of pleasure, whether it's done by self or whether it's done with a partner.
Yeah.
So once we have those comprehensive conversations with our young folks about pleasure and make it less about sex, then some of those taboos can be lifted. But to answer your question, no, they're still there because there's still some shame associated with touching yourself. There's still this expectations of, purity and keep your legs closed until you meet your husband. Well, another part of that, no one tells you that your so-called husband may have their own set of luggage they're bringing to the relationship. So are you just supposed to become complacent and acquiesce to whomever you meet up with just because this is your husband and you're supposed to have this fantastic union of sexual pleasure and procreation? Forget all the mental stuff that may be going on. Forget all the psychological
What we've seen is this
stuff.
on TV that looks amazing.
Thank you.
Like, oh my God, fireworks and music in the background and oohs and ahs, and then it may not be that way and you like, oh. Because what we saw may not even be what's happening. And because that's the vision of it, because it's been so taboo. It's not about learning who you are and what you like. And I mean, I was a good and grown person before I realized what I liked, because it was for him. And I was like, this can't be it. Like, this can't be all that it is to it. And I just almost, the shame or the guilt of trying to learn myself, I had to unlearn. I had one of my girlfriends just maybe a month ago, and she's, 36. She's a girl I mentor. She said, am I going to hell for buying a rose? And she was so serious because, if y'all don't know what a rose is, Google it, Amazon it. It's for female pleasure. And she felt so guilty about that. It was so sad to me. She's married. And her husband, of course, she was with somebody else before, and I'm sure he's been with somebody else before, but now they're married, and she doesn't know how to help him make her happy. And so she's literally there for him, and like, I want to feel pleasure for myself, but I feel so guilty afterwards. And that was so sad for me, and that's when I thought about you, and I said, y'all, we have got to do better about how we're making people feel, because the people who are telling you not to do this, not to do that, they didn't do it. They children don't match. They got these outside folks. They didn't abstain. They didn't do any of the things that you're putting the pressure on for somebody else to do. And so we grow up ashamed of our bodies. You know that, and I'm sure you do know, some women have never even seen themselves. Like, they will not look at themselves without clothes on. And that's, I don't know, Cheryl, how would you help someone to learn their own bodies? Is it difficult for a person who that may be our age, that hasn't really experienced the type of pleasure that's for them to experience, to even take a look at themselves?
It's totally difficult. So, of course, every case is different.
Of course.
Generally, realizing that they have all these obstacles in the way, let's start slow. Touch your elbow. Touch your knees. What aspect of your body do you find, pretty? What do is it your lips? Is it your nose? Is it your chin? What do you find sexy? So before we can get to that intimate part of that person, let's appreciate who you are. Let's appreciate the other aspects of your body. Now let's take baby steps. Maybe not full disclosure, but let's try a bubble bath and just wonder. And see what happens. It really is, and in the meantime, we're having those deep conversations about, all right, how did you internalize these messages that part of your body, that your vulva, that your vagina is not pretty, is not good enough, that is bad, that is sinful. How do you start internalizing those messages? Those are the tougher conversations.
Night of fire.
I need some balloons right now because you just signed. That is amazing. Can you share with us that experience?
God's major assignment is people, not platforms. A lot of times, God will release us, and He'll even release us to the nations, but because the platform doesn't match, we think we're waiting. But God say, no, I released you to a people. If there are people in front of you, you've been doing it. You've been answering the call. Don't allow the level or either the size of the platform to cause you to misinterpret what God has already done.
We're ready for what God wants. God, we are lost in darkness.
Severe weather can strike anytime, anywhere, but there's a simple way to stay safe. Hey, Jim Cantori here. I stay safe in dangerous weather by planning ahead. You can stay safe too with a few easy steps. Build an inexpensive kit with supplies for your family's needs. Write down important information like phone numbers and medications. Always talk with your family and remember any pets in your planning. Be ready, be safe. Start your plan today at ready.gov/plan.
God loves us unconditionally, and because God loves us, this is the way we act in the world. So I say all of that to ask you, what's your theology of preaching, and is there a central theological claim that shows up again and again in your preaching?
I wouldn't say that there is a single claim, but I would say that one of my deepest theological convictions is that God is at work in the world, and God does what God does through us. And so leaning into what does it mean to be agents of God in the world. I'm not thinking about a distant Jesus. I'm thinking about Emmanuel, God present with us.
Ooh, yes. I mean, I wanted to have this conversation with you guys because, for one, we're old enough to have it. And if we're 40 and single and just now having it, it's so unfortunate. But I wanted us to talk about who God made us. He designed our bodies. So he knew what parts of us would be more sensitive than others. And I get it that, your body is for your spouse or your partner, your husband. I get that. But what I'm talking about here with Cheryl is putting unrealistic views on other people to make them now not appreciate what God made. And so some of my friends have been celibate for a long time. And if you don't know what that is, that's just like not going with sex. But it's not even by choice, it's by guilt. They don't want to be perceived as wild or loose or, she out there, she hot, she whatever it is. And so until my husband finds me, I'm just not going to have sex. What do you think mentally would have to go into, or how would a person, and if that's your choice, that's your choice, but mentally, if that's what I'm doing because of what I think other people would think, how healthy is that? Or is that something that you find that when people say I'm celibate or I want to abstain, how do you even start that conversation? Is it the why you want to?
That's the part of the authentic self showing up.
Yeah.
Why? Oh, because so-and-so, deaconess so-and-so, said, when I sit at the church and I have to cover my legs, and if I'm out there and if it gets back to her and so-and-so, okay, well, all right, let's peel back this reason onto why. And something that I always use is, last I checked, I didn't walk on water.
Yes.
And I'm assuming most folks out here can't.
Mm-hmm.
So who is deaconess so-and-so?
Right.
To be the judge over what's good for you.
Yeah.
Again, more conversations as to why their word, why what they think is so much higher than what you think of yourself. And then here's where it can get a little bit tricky. I really do, but it's part of the conversations.
Yeah.
I want to talk about their relationship with God.
Yes.
Is this person a liaison between you and your God?
Yes.
That's where I rub some folks, because they're like, oh, what are you, like, but that's keeping it real, though, because this deaconess so-and-so may be dead and gone.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to account to one person.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, I look at history in my own church setting or my own community where it's almost norm for teenagers to have babies out of wedlock. I mean, it's not a secret. It's norm. So the message that we're giving isn't working. It's not working. And if you had to talk to moms and family that have children, I don't want to say how early, or because we don't even call body parts by the right names. Now, why are we doing that? We calling it all kinds of crazy stuff. And then when we hear the proper name, we almost cringe, like, oh, she said that out loud. That's what it's called. I mean, that's the proper name for it. So how early do we start the conversation about your body?
See, this is where it's sometimes a challenge for me to separate the clinician from the mom.
Oh, yes.
But I've done a great job of merging.
Okay.
So to answer your question, and this is a little bit of personal insight as
Okay.
well. As soon as they say mama, vagina. As soon as they say pop, penis. So many levels of that. If your consent as a child is being violated, you have to be able to say, no, someone touched my vagina.
Right.
And not my hoo-ha, not my popsicle, not my dolly. No, we have to be very concise in what was violated. So as soon as they can mumble those first words, your babies need to know what parts of their body exist.
Yeah.
So as soon as possible. To your point about the preteen pregnancies.
Yes.
Teenage pregnancies. Not a researcher,
Right.
but I've read a lot, researched a lot. And there have been studies where if they were brought up in a sex-positive community, where access to contraceptives were available, where more comprehensive conversations were had, not just about sex and STIs. Yes, those exist. But do you know there's so many things in between, hey, how you doing, and let's have sex. You can kiss, you can hold hands, you can snuggle, like all these different aspects of pleasure that's being annoyed, but no one wants to talk about them because they fear that it's going to automatically equate to sex and intercourse. So we shy away from those hardcore conversations, but guess what? If we don't have them, their girlfriend or boyfriend will have them. Some predator will have them with them. So as a parent, it behooves you to have those conversations early on. And again, this is the mommy steps in. And my daughters, mom, but I will in a quick minute. And this, we always, whenever they would go to visit someone, did anyone touch your vagina?
Yeah.
No, mom. Are you sure? Yes, mom, I'm sure. As they got older, let's talk about pleasure. You guys, and I thank the school system for telling you about STIs and pregnancy. You know that exists.
Right.
But you know, you can just be googly-eyed with somebody and get all the warm and fuzzies without anything going into anything.
Yeah.
Without sex, without intercourse, you can still enjoy the presence of your partner without the sex. Does anyone tell you about that? No. Okay. Well, let's talk about pleasure and how you can receive pleasure, how you can receive intimacy, having deep conversations with your partner as a teenager. That's like, let's talk about that stuff. That's where some of the taboo can start to peel away. Let's open the playbook up and have a conversation about things other than just sex and intercourse.
Well, do you find that? Then this clearly we don't know what everybody's thinking. We don't know. Hasn't talked to every single person, but you know, it's so much emphasis on the woman not having sex. But your son, you patting him on the back at 12, 13, 14 years old, and so they have I don't know. I mean. So when they get with someone, maybe that's not as or not have been exposed, do you think for men it's harder for them to understand what's healthy?
Most definitely.
Okay.
There I can usher in the word consent. I can definitely usher that in because, again, it's these stereotypes of thank you media, thank you friends and peer groups of I'm a guy. If I like you, you're supposed to acquiesce to me. When I come and approach you, you're supposed to lay down with me because I've said the right things to you. Because I purchased roses, not that type of rose, but I purchased flowers for you because I took you to dinner. And because those messages become so ingrained in the male psyche, when they hear, no, slow down, let's talk about it, like, no, she's just playing hard to get,
Yeah.
or she's just doing this. So yes, the conversations must, again, I'm biased, I have daughters, but I'm quite sure if there was a penis owner outside of my husband in my house, we would have very similar conversations. Respect boundaries.
Yes.
Unless you have an explicit yes, everything else means no. Everything else means no. When it comes to pleasure, it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street.
Oh my God, say that again for the folks in the back. Because I think when you're talking about that, there's a lot of women that I know, I don't know every woman, but the women that I know, when you can get them to open up about sex, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like pleasure is for him. And it's almost like they don't even know how to start the conversation of what pleases them, because they don't want the man to think that they was with somebody else. They know. And so it just becomes an unfulfilled cycle of not getting fulfilled sexually. And so talk to me about this two-way street thing.
See, and that's, so what happens in a lot of cases that present, there's this desire discrepancy. And that's going back to the whole two-way street, because, and no real fault of my penis owners, but that's just how they were conditioned.
Yeah.
And they just learned to, like, is all about me and my pleasure and procreation and what feels good to me, without even checking in with their partner.
Wow.
Without even saying, but at the same time, I can't give all the blame to them, because we as vulva owners, we don't know what we like because we're too shameful to see what feels good to us. So if we don't know what feels good to us, how dare we expect him to be a mind reader? And since we're not disclosing that to him, he's thinking, oh, I know what I'm doing, so I'm seeking my pleasure. She must be getting enjoyment from it. And all the while, she's like, oh, come on.
She counting the ceiling.
Exactly, she's counting the ceiling
She counting
tiles.
the 10, just like, is this thing over? Okay, let's talk about this show. It's Grown and Sexy, Singles Over 40. Okay, so I'm full disclosure, y'all know I'm 50. And I was in a long-term committed marriage for a long time. I'm talking about a long time. But now I'm not. And so whether sex was good or bad, that wasn't the issue. It's just that I had access to it. But now I'm single. What does a person like me do with that sexual energy now? I mean, there's people just like me that suddenly find themselves single, and you know, you still have cravings, desires, thoughts, all of those things. So help us that are newly single. What do we do? Or what, I mean, because there's almost like, I hate to say it's what's okay to do. Because we don't know at this point. I'm single now. And so I'm like, I wonder what Cheryl would say. That's what I was like. I wonder what Cheryl would say, so I get the chance to actually put you on the spot, actually.
That's okay.
But what do people do with that sexual energy now?
For my single folks.
Single folks.
For my single folks, they can do a few things. They, just like your friend, they can get them a rose, and really step into that space of self-exploration and see what feels good, because it's almost like you don't want to get back in the ball game without practice.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So before you bring somebody else into your space, you have to be able to direct, yeah, boo, I like you, but I really like when you do this. I really like when this is done to me, or no, I'm not into that. I am into this. So that is actually an awesome time for my single folks to really, not even recreate, but get back to who they are, and hone in on what feels good to them, whether it's self-pleasure, yes, whether it's, you know, there are spicy stories, there are some ethical, I'm not being paid to promote anyone, so I don't want to throw anything out there, but there are some cute little erotica stories that may, like, oh, that sounds interesting. There are some cute little documentaries and TV shows that may introduce certain positions and ideas to my single folks. But when it comes to that energy with self, and here's something that's gonna be a little bit pushy for some folks. It's still okay to be single and date, and not just date one person. No one said that you are in this polyamorous relationship. Like, no, I'm just seeing what I like. We're not single like you and I, and it's just you and me, and it's no, it's just us, and we don't need this exposure of other folks. You have to be able to, when you're single, be able to identify, verbalize what it is you want in a relationship.
Yeah.
And until you know what you don't want sometimes, you can't really speak on what you do want. So it's okay to date. I didn't say you want to sleep around.
Yeah.
If you want to, that's you too, but realize there is protection.
Yes.
Please use it. Realize that there are still some safety concerns because we are at COVID.
Yes.
So realize that you have to maintain your health. But also, more importantly, realize that that single space allows you to practice those ideas of consent, gives you the space to practice the ideas of what feels good to you and how to ask for it, because we're not committed, we're not connected.
Right.
So I can say, no, I'm not feeling you like that. We tried this, I don't like that. And as you say, you don't want to just ghost them. You can still like do a casual, I heard you. You can still do a casual, like, it was nice meeting you.
It was nice.
But this is not the relationship for me. Without closing that gate of exploring something else with other relationships. And you know, one of the things is, even when you're not single, there is so much power in your support system.
Okay.
There's so much power in your girlfriends. There's so much power in just getting around people who allows you to relax and just enjoy yourself and be you. And sometimes, I'm not going to negate the sexual energy. Yes, that's there, but also it's not by itself. There is this social energy, because there's a social part of that sexual energy. I'm assuming you want to be with someone,
Right.
be intimate with someone, and talk to someone. You can still dance and be intimate. You can still talk to someone and be vulnerable. You can still have, there's certain aspects of that sexual energy at a meetup, at a festival, you know, a walk in the park. So it's not that that sexual energy has to equate to intercourse.
Yeah.
That may be a way of like, no, I just need to meet people. I have all this inside of me that I want to share with folks. I love dancing. I love, you know, eating. I love, you know, wine tasting. You can still, there are communities where you can still sort of spread out that sexual energy.
Yeah.
But when it comes to trying to pleasure and seek pleasure, Rose.
I love it. So, you know, my time with Cheryl is up, but y'all know, because we ain't even scratched the surface on this, I'm going to ask her back at another time, because I still think this is a conversation that we need to keep having. We need to keep having it, because we are sexual beings, and having unrealistic, unhealthy views that we keep projecting on the next generation is not serving us well. Now, clearly, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I'm not trying to say, oh my God, DeShannon suddenly don't love Jesus. Don't look at me on Sundays and say, I thought that said Pastor DeShannon in front of her name, and start tripping. I am grown, good and grown. I still think I'm sexy. I'm single, and I'm over 40, so I should be able to have this type of conversation with a professional so that I can have a healthy relationship the next go around. Listen, tag somebody. Share this. Let them know that this is a conversation that we're gonna have again. We're talking about sex. 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 Say it out loud. We're talking about sex. So we want to thank Cheryl Walker.
Thank you.
The company she's with is Globecore Inc. If you want to contact her, I'm sure her social media is at the bottom of the screen. Listen, you might say, well, maybe I don't know if I need a sex therapist. Maybe I want to see listen, contact someone, just have a little conversation to see if something, but if you're not comfortable with sex or just saying that out loud, you probably could benefit from a Cheryl, whether it's her or somebody that does something that she does. Again, my name is DeShannon, just DeShannon. It ain't Minister, Pastor DeShannon. It ain't all the commas and letters behind my name, because this is the time of my life that I need to be the best version of myself. And I want you to be that too. So until next Monday, 9 p.m., this has been Grown and Sexy, Singles Over 40. Have a good night, guys.